Hi, graduates. Congratulations on making it to this day. Congratulations on graduating from one of the most rigorous and intense music programs that any young musician could ever go through. To graduate from Colburn, but frankly, even to get into Colburn, you've probably spent your entire life meeting and exceeding every single expectation and achieving at the very, very highest levels. And now, the moment you graduate, it might feel like the rug is being totally pulled out from under you. And in order of magnitude more than it would for any other graduating class in any other year. You played by the rules, and now suddenly it feels like the rules have changed. And I'm not here to convince you that that doesn't totally suck, because it absolutely does. If you're grieving a life you can no longer live, I really want you to take a moment and just grieve it. Acknowledge that loss before you delete that summer festival or that orchestra trial week from your calendar. And just know that you're not alone. Grieve with your peers. Grieve with the very people who are graduating beside you. And then when it feels right, start thinking about the new world that you want to create together. So as a composer, my entire job is creating new worlds. Sometimes they're hybrid worlds between two musical cultures. And sometimes they're worlds that allow people from different communities within the same city to make music together. I love creating worlds where every person is able to use their own unique abilities to show their best self to one another and to engage one another in really meaningful dialogue. So I wasn't always this clear about what I wanted to do. When I graduated with an undergrad from Juilliard 15 years ago, all I knew is that I had to be the best. And I had no idea what that meant. So I tried really hard to follow people who I thought were successful and just do whatever they did. And at that moment, I think success just felt like a rushing river. If I continued to follow the current, it seemed like everyone else was following, I would kind of rush towards success. And if I stepped out of the current for just one moment, the boat would just leave me and I'd be left on the shore. That's really how it felt to me at the time. And I remember the moment where I had to finally step out onto the shore. I'd been wanting to study Indian classical music for so long, and I'd been too afraid to do it because I knew it would make me different. And I knew it would give me less time to write music for the competitions and the opportunities and the orchestra readings and all those things that young composers do. But the minute I felt that catch in my throat that makes the beginning of a pitch sound characteristically Indian, I knew there was no turning back. So these kinds of things look really brave in the rearview mirror because, of course, a decade later, I know exactly how it turned out. But at the time, it was truly terrifying. I wrote music that wasn't suitable for opportunities that young composers have. And by including Indian musicians, musicians from another culture, which is from my culture, I was excluding my own music from the Western classical culture. And it finally hit a fever pitch when a composer I really deeply admired and trusted told me that I should write my opera in English because no one speaks Hindi. Which, there are 30 million more native speakers of Hindi than there are of English, but that kind of shows you the way things were at that time. So each time I start to create, I ask myself, what does success look like? I ask this of myself in my composing, but then I also ask that same question to my creative partners, to conductors, to ensembles, orchestras, choirs, communities. Because if someone is pulling together so many resources to ask me to create a work for them, I want to understand ways to measure the success of that work. And those metrics can be so wide-ranging. Sometimes it's about bringing in new audiences. Sometimes it's so that a musician can expand their view into a different musical culture. Sometimes it's about ticket sales or donors or publicity or grants. And sometimes it's just that a single person is moved in ways that they can't express in words. But I want to understand the entire range of what success means to them, because then I can see where my definition of success aligns with theirs, and then I can create a work that kind of blooms from that shared vision. And when you're asking someone else what success looks like to them, that means that you can also tell them what it looks like to you in all those same metrics. Because the agreement goes two ways, right? When you know you will bare your soul to a project, it's important for you to ask for what you need in order to bare your soul. And when you know that your work is contributing positively to an institution, you become vital to that institution moving forward. You become indispensable. But here's the thing about these huge institutions. They're all really just people. Major international competitions and these prizes and press outlets that review your work and auditions for orchestras and managers. It feels sometimes like it's this deus ex machina situation where there's some unknown nameless force that just bestows something on you. And you don't know how you got it, and it's really terrifying because that means you also don't know when you're going to lose it. But in actual fact, it's not the powers that be that decide these things. They're all just decided by a few individual people in a room, each casting their vote for their personal values and trying to form the world they want to see. And when you create these really deep, meaningful relationships with individual people, when you really share your soul with them, then that becomes the foundation for something beyond any single project or any single institution. So many institutions are falling apart right now, and I know you're scared. And you know what? I am too. But I've realized that so many people I love at those institutions are actually people I met years ago in other capacities, through different institutions, just in other places. And as this world breaks down, and as we rebuild a different musical ecosystem, we have the chance to build something that's even more successful based on our own values. You get to be in that room. You get to vote for your values. You get to play a part in deciding what the future of this field is. And that's a really incredible opportunity. So 6 years after I had that first catch in my throat that pulled me into the world of Indian classical music, I got a call. In that time in between, I had spent a year in India on a Fulbright, kind of filling in the Hindustani side of my musical training, and then coming back to Yale to do a DMA in the Western classical world. And the call was for a dream commission. It was Yale's choir, Juilliard's Baroque Orchestra, and then solo sitar and tabla players from India. It was the convergence of these three worlds that made up the entirety of my musical training. And I had thought all those years ago that I was stepping out of the river and onto the shore and just letting the musical world rush by me. But what I realized was that I was really standing at the confluence of these three rivers, these three different streams that I had pursued independently, and that I was now able to finally bring into dialogue with one another. I wish I could see your faces as I talk to you, because I want to look into each of your eyes and tell you that you are so much more powerful than you think you are. When you step out onto the stage, you step into a space of incredible pressure and incredible judgment from critics, from audiences, and often even from your own teachers and peers. And you take that pressure and you take that judgment and you alchemize it into beauty and grace and transcendence. Remember that music is just the lens through which you see the world. Ask yourself what success looks like. Ask yourself what your own human values are. Ask yourself, as this world falls apart, what is the world you want to see bloom in its place? And then use music as the means and as the method to answer those questions. Let's live into those questions together, and let's create the world we want to see.